You know that feeling when you see an updated entry to a series that you used to love and your first thought is, man, I hope they got it right this time. That's me with the VHS series. So did they get it right with 85? Let's find out. Welcome to Kaotic Pop, your hub for horror, anime, and pop culture. My name is James, and today I'm finally talking about the newest entry in my favorite series, VHS. And when I first saw VHS, I was all in. It combined two of my favorite types of horror, found footage and anthologies. The wraparound story made sense and was actually good. The stories were well written, they were scary, and they looked really good too. Then came VHS 2 and VHS Viral, which were two solid additions. So naturally, when VHS 94 dropped, I was watching it on release day, and I was pretty let down. When 99 came out, I thought maybe they got it right this time, which also turned out to be a letdown. Needless to say, I wasn't in a rush to see this new entry into the franchise, but I was going to watch it nonetheless. Since my expectations were so low going in, I can honestly say it was okay. For the most part, the acting was fine, but the segments were hit or miss. The two best stories in the movie are No Wake and Ambrosia, which is essentially the same story but broken into two segments. And that's where my main issues come in. The entire film was so disjointed to the point where I kind of stopped paying attention at some points. So I'll give my thoughts on each segment as far as acting, story, etc., and give my overall opinion about the entire film at the end. I'll save the wraparound story for last, so I'll start with No Wake, which I think is probably the best story in the entire film. 7 friends drive an RV to camp at a lake. 5 of them ignore the no swimming sign and go water skiing. While out on the water, someone starts sniping them one by one. I love the story, I love the acting, but the special effects makeup was just absolutely phenomenal. They knocked it out of the park with the gore and the prosthetics. Everything just looked pretty realistic, I have to say. And those are some of the reasons why this one is like my favorite in the entire film. And then there's God of Death. A Mexican news crew is delivering their morning newscast when the 85 earthquake struck and killed all but the cameraman. He's saved by a rescue crew, and as they make their way through the rubble, they realize they're no longer on the surface. The acting was good, but the story was pretty weak, not well structured in my opinion. And what I mean is, like, it kind of started and just sort of went along, and a couple of things happened, and then we're at the end. So there wasn't a typical sort of 3-act structure. It just kind of happened. And then the ending just kind of happened. At least there was a decent amount of gore, so it wasn't a complete waste of 10 or 15 minutes or however long this segment was. Now, TKNOGD was a little better, but only by a little. Ada is a performance artist who does a piece about how God is dead and has been replaced by the God of technology. She plays a video that demos a VR device called iPhone and the data glove, which were actually real things in 85. I looked that up because I was like, this is ridiculous. You know, now they're just kind of taking iPhone and making something up to relate it to current time. But no, the iPhone, I guess they call it because you have earphones and you have an iPhone, whatever. It was actually a real thing, which was kind of surprising. But I mean, kind of just a little cool Easter egg, I guess. So anyway, she then puts on her own VR device and all hell breaks loose. The story was kind of okay. I mean, we've seen this several times before with other films. The acting was decent, but the gore was great. But it was still a little goofy. Like, the gore just kind of was a little comical at points. But overall, it was a decent segment. Now, Ambrosia is the continuation of No Wake. It's my second favorite segment in the film. I just don't know why they separated, and it doesn't make sense how the two stories made it onto the same tape at different points in time on the tape, but I digress. The Wrigley family are hosting a celebration in honor of their teenage daughter, Ruth, who films the occasion with her cousin, James. Now, my only complaint about this segment was that it was too short. I really wanted more of this particular part of the story, and I think No Wake and Ambrosia could be another really good spin-off film, because I definitely want to see more of that. And the final standalone segment is Dreamkill. The basic premise is that the police are getting sent videotapes that show murders before they actually happen. I actually thought the story here was pretty decent. I thought it was pretty well written and directed. The acting was good, and the special and visual effects were spot on. This is another story I think that could be a really good spin-off of its own, but like in a third-person narrative, kind of like what they did with the recent one, Kids vs. Aliens, and the one they did a few years ago called Siren. I do think it could have been just a little bit better. I think that the ending of this one could have been fleshed out a little bit more. And finally, we have the wraparound story. Now, the wraparound story is supposed to be a made-for-TV documentary, but it doesn't have that feeling at all. It just feels like another segment intercut with weird commercials and the rest of the segments. Now, if this was a documentary that was recorded on TV or from TV, how did all of these other segments end up on this being recorded onto the same tape? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, in the first VHS, the wraparound story was about a group of kids who broke into a house that had a bunch of tapes on the floor, and each tape was its own segment. That made sense. The second film's frame story tied back into the first one, which also made a lot of sense. I don't know what happened with the rest of them. They just kind of went downhill from there. The other thing I don't really understand is if this was a made-for-TV documentary, they would not have shown any of the gore that happened. They probably wouldn't have even aired it on TV. Like, you can't even use suspension of disbelief here, because it just doesn't work. This part just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it really bugged me. I'm hard-pressed to ever not recommend a movie, but I will say, if you skip this one, you aren't really missing anything. Now, if you haven't seen any of the VHS films, I highly recommend that you at least watch the first two and then leave it up to yourself whether or not you watch the rest. Because really, to be honest, the rest of them you can just take or leave. Now, if you'd like to hear my full thoughts on this film, including spoilers and all that good stuff, head over to patreon.com/Kaotic Pop. And there for just $1, you can get my new video series, Spoiled Meat. And if you'd like to watch VHS85, it's currently available on Shudder, and along with the rest of the VHS films, I believe they're also on Tubi and Amazon Prime. And if you want to see even more of my ugly mug, follow me on TikTok at Kaotic Pop. Links, as always, are down below. And remember, if it was real, the cameraman would be dead too, unless it's found footage. Good night, y'all.